The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Trey Hendrickson has his money.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
Now we get to talk about what Trey Hendrickson has agreed to, why it makes sense for both sides, why it doesn't make sense for both sides, and what this means for Trey's future in 2026. And James, let's start with your initial takeaways. Trey is going to be playing. That's obviously good, right?
Well, yeah, let's start there. Is the Bengals have started the year 0-2 in each of the past 3 seasons, 22, 23, and 24. They've talked all offseason, literally since January, whatever it was, when Zach Taylor fired Lou Anarumo and the rest of the coaching staff that he didn't want around anymore and thought they needed to move on. He said, we have to start faster. Well, it's hard to start faster when you have a distraction. And Trey didn't want to be a distraction, but guess what? When your best defensive player isn't playing, it's still a distraction. It's a distraction to everybody. And when you're hoping your defense is better under Al Golden, significantly better, guess what? It is a distraction. It's hard to win. It's hard to get stops. It's hard to feel like that you can be the defense that I think they're hoping and expecting to be. And so it is huge news. And we're going to dissect this for sure. And this won't be the only time we cover it. But it's huge news to know that Trey Hendrickson, the NFL sack leader, an all-pro defensive end, a guy who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year last season, and has had the best 2-year stretch of his career over the past 2 seasons, that he's going to be in stripes, happy, ready to go, and have 2 weeks to practice before that opening game against Cleveland. It's funny. I remember saying like August 22nd is my deadline, kind of in that range. They got pretty close to it. And there's a lot of not so good, I would say, when it comes to this deal, but the good is for the 2025 Cincinnati Bengals, you're going to get a Trey Hendrickson that should be ready to go week 1, distraction-free.
I always thought Trey Hendrickson was playing this year. The good is that I guess, it's done earlier than I thought it would be done. I thought we'd be talking about this until next Thursday. And it's nice that it's done now instead of later. He gets to do the whole 2 weeks of practice, ramp up a little bit. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if he's somewhat limited in that first game of the season from a snap count perspective. Wouldn't be surprised if he's not limited from a snap count perspective in that first game of the season, just because he has missed all of training camp. And so they still have all of that not done for Trey Hendrickson, all of that conditioning and all that buildup that Trey Hendrickson didn't get to do. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's somewhat limited in week 1 from a snap count perspective as they ramp him up. But again, like I said, with the way he works, wouldn't surprise me if there's no limitation either. The nitty gritty of this deal, James, is that it is reportedly a $14 million raise for Trey Hendrickson in 2025 with another $1 million in incentives, according to Adam Schefter, if Trey's out there for at least 60% of the team's defensive snaps and the Bengals make the playoffs. So it could be a $15 million raise for Trey Hendrickson. It essentially adjusts his previous 1-year extension, which was 1 year, $21 million, and now it's 1 year, $35 million. You had the $14 million raise. So to me, James, I think Trey wins here. If you had to say one side wins, one side loses, whatever it is, Trey gets a raise for a year that he was already under contract and gives up very little in return. The Bengals must have believed him when he told them repeatedly he was not going to play this year on his current deal. They also wanted to reward him. I think that's part of it too. But there's not much upside here for the Bengals. They, I guess, don't have any commitments to a player that they're worried about being on the wrong side of 30. I guess that is something they would consider a win. They get Trey Hendrickson on the field. That's obviously good. Like I said, I think that was going to happen regardless at some point this year. But I have a hard time seeing this as something that isn't Trey Hendrickson at least getting something here. He didn't get what he wanted, which was multiple years of security, but he got something in exchange for playing in a year that he was already under contract.
Sure. And that's the win. He gets paid. He gets to be with his teammates. He gets to play out this year. Here's why the Bengals did it. And why I think it's a win for the Bengals. It's the opposite for me. They didn't commit anything long-term. They didn't have any problem paying Trey this year. They were worried about paying Trey in 26 and 27, and certainly 27. And if he's good this year, well, guess what? We're right back here. And in that's what's surprising to me about the Trey situation. If he has 15 sacks this year, he's not hitting the market. Doesn't mean I've seen some of the insiders and I think Trey's camp expects, he's going to hit the market. Why would he? What would lead anyone to believe that he's going to actually become a free agent? That doesn't mean he's going to be on the Bengals. Maybe he won't be. Maybe they won't want to deal with it. Maybe they get an asset for him and go that route. But he's still able to get franchise tagged. That tag is going to be reasonable based on projections, comparatively speaking to what Trey's contract is and what his demands would be. If he plays really well this year, it would not shock me. Regardless, and they do have enough cap space to do it. They're projected to have like $64 million in cap space as of now. Obviously, that'll change. So that's what's so interesting to me is he doesn't get that long-term security, and it kicks the can down the road. And we're going to be having this discussion if he plays well in February. We are guaranteed.
Yeah, that was a big question that I think a lot of people had. Is there a no tag clause in this contract? According to Jordan Schultz, there is no tag clause. According to Diana Rossini, the Bengals had a 3-year, $95 million offer for Trey Hendrickson. That was the multi-year offer. And I think that includes 2025. So that's a 2-year extension that would be 2025, 2026, 2027 for a total of $95 million in new money, plus what he was already in line to make this year, which would put him right around $34, $35 million a year. But when there were no guarantees in year 2, or at least not adequate guarantees in year 2, Trey Hendrickson didn't want that. And that sent them back to the drawing board, back to the table, and is why they land on a 1-year pay raise, no extension for Trey Hendrickson that has him in line to be a free agent or get franchise tagged. And we'll have to talk more about that possibility because I think that is definitely going to be something that is going to be a consideration next year. At the very least, a tag and trade and doing this whole song and dance again.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
It's finally here. It's game week. Bryce Underwood is the starter.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
With the breaking news, hashtag breaking, of the, or how did my friend Ted Hauser used to do that for the hashtag? He would double tap, 2 fingers. That's right. Back when Twitter was brand new. Yeah, so obviously breaking news. It hasn't been declared to us in the media yet, but that is coming in, approximately an hour and a half-ish, when we meet with Sharon Moore for his Monday morning press conference. But Sharon, well, not Sharon, but CBS Sports, and then On3, and then M Live, and then everyone confirmed that Bryce Underwood is going to be named the starter today. Sounds like the team was alerted to this yesterday. This is brand new information. Listen, we all know it, right? Like, I'm sure there's a couple of you that are more of the trolley types. They'll be like, "What, Isaiah? You didn't say that." And that's like, well, I said it 18,000 times. Not literally. Don't go and try to count. But that's I know how the trolls on the show work. But yeah, we knew that this was going to be happening for quite some time. The writing was on the wall. I think the moment that Mikey Keene couldn't go in spring ball, Mikey Keene might not have been able to hold him off, right? I think that in an ideal world, Mikey Keene would be starting at least these first couple games, maybe the first 4. Like, we've long looked at this as a Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence situation. And that situation was no different. Kelly Bryant started the first 4 games, then Trevor Lawrence started. So that's kind of, I think, what the intent was. Didn't go that way. And it would have been really hard for Mikey Keene to hold him off anyway. But I just want to give you a little bit of a recap, a refresher here. Now that we're getting into game week, Bryce is going to have another week of practice, right? But ultimately, like, what are we looking at? What was he able to do so far? Well, he got to participate in about 2/3 of bowl prep, right? Like, the time that he shows up is a little bit later. So like they'd already been in bowl prep, but he shows up in 2/3, maybe a half of bowl prep, something like that. So he gets like what, out of 15 practices, let's say he got like 7 to 10 in, something like that. Granted, not with the ones or anything like that. I mean, I guess we don't know. Maybe they decided to do that. And hence they were like, we just got to run the ball as much as possible against Alabama. Then he got 15 practices in the spring, and then he got 15 practices again with the ones and in fall camp. So you're looking at a guy that's had about 40 practices already. By the time he gets to the actual game, we're looking at about 45 practices. I don't remember because like I was following pretty closely, but not so closely that I was a sicko like we all are now here. Anyway, if anyone, just so you know, if you watch the show, if you're an everydayer, you're a sicko a little bit, but I'm a sicko for hosting this show and all of that in a good way, right? But like I don't remember if Tate Forcier enrolled early, right? Like maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But like there's other freshmen, maybe not quarterbacks, that don't necessarily get all that time on task that Bryce has, right? When you consider like 45 practices. If you have about, between 4 and 5 practices a week, I don't know exactly how many you have. That might be like 4 in a walkthrough or something like that. You think about that. Okay, so you've got that many. He's got 45. You're looking at about half a season's worth of practices that he's already gotten under his belt. So that's already huge that he's got that he's going to be able to have that going into going into this into this first game. And obviously, it could be a different situation if it was a much bigger opponent right out the gates. But this is a moment for him to be able to kind of get his feet wet. And I did like a little bit of a stat projection. Everyone keeps on asking me on Thursday, what's your stat projection? What's your stat projection for Bryce? It ended up being something like, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I think it was like 28-25. That's a pretty high number for a true freshman, to be honest. As far as yards are concerned, it was an average of like 230. I had a couple games, I think 2, where he was under 200 yards. And then I had one where he hit 300. Only one. Otherwise, we're all in the 200 range, varying degrees and everything like that. So, again, like just everything I've heard about him from behind the scenes is glowing and exemplary. I understand the spring game didn't necessarily give you the stat line that would give you the warm and fuzzies, but if you watch the spring game and like recognize A, the split squad, B, like the ball placement, the accuracy, all that kind of stuff, it was spot on. Now, I do still have concerns. We'll get to some of those concerns in segment 3, but like I am still concerned about the wide receivers and offensive line, right? Like nothing is necessarily allayed those concerns, and nothing will until I see it in person when it's happening, because we've been through the fall camp talk before. We've heard it all year upon year upon year. Now they got the quarterback. The offense should be a heck of a lot better just by virtue of that. But there's still a lot that I want to see. So, but nonetheless, good first step, good first opponent for Bryce to get his feet wet. You hope you don't see a lot of mistakes. I think 28-25, I think 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's my final stat line for him after 12 games. I mean, that's a pretty high number for 12 games. So anyway, we will see.
Like I said the other day, there was no need to keep Kenny Pickett.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
Yes, it did happen. It's official. The Browns traded Kenny Pickett last night to the Las Vegas Raiders for a 5th-round pick in 2026. Now, I want to explain a little bit what happened here, because I initially thought this was the path of how things would play out. I thought that Kenny Pickett would end up the odd man out. I thought he should be the odd man out pretty much from the beginning of this competition, despite what was being reported about the fact that the team really liked Kenny Pickett and thought he had a legitimate shot at winning the starting job. That obviously got derailed by the hamstring injury. And in recent weeks, I had pivoted to believing, okay, they're going to keep all 4 quarterbacks. And that was real. That was real. They were okay keeping all 4 quarterbacks. And I think you got those sentiments from Andrew Berry on the broadcast over the weekend, where he told Chris Rose, like, it's not even a decision for us. It's easy. We feel good about it. Whatever. Like, they were ready to keep 4 quarterbacks. I wholeheartedly believe that in my heart of hearts, based on what I know, based on the things that I've heard. And so because of that, I think you're looking at a situation that was the things change, and they change quickly in this league. And what changed was you had a team that was desperate enough to pull the trigger, to give the Browns what they were asking for, to get a backup quarterback. And that was the scenario that we talked about all offseason, potentially being the way that you whittle down this quarterback depth chart, right? It was this idea that you get to training camp, there's always injuries, there's always guys that get hurt, and then maybe a team gets desperate enough that they're like, you know what? We need that guy. Let's go make a trade. And that's what happened with the Raiders, with Aiden O'Connell suffering the wrist injury. That essentially cleared the path for them to need a backup quarterback. That became a big priority for them. And here they were pulling the trigger, sending a 5th-round pick back to Andrew Berry to get Kenny Pickett out there. Aiden O'Connell is going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks, so this makes a lot of sense for them. They can get somebody in quickly, acclimate them, all those different things. And so after trading a 5th-round pick plus DTR and the initial deal to the Eagles to get Kenny Pickett, this essentially makes the deal a wash for the Browns, who now have 10 picks in 2026. That falls in line with what we've heard Jimmy Haslam say about how this team was focused on accumulating draft picks and how they were going to continue to try to do that. So like I in terms of like the haul, in terms of this kind of coming to fruition, I do think it's a win for the Browns. It's a win for Andrew Berry. I get it. You're going to look back and say, well, they gave up more than what they got back in return for Kenny Pickett. And that's fair. But also DTR was just released by the Eagles. So it's not like the Eagles got some massive asset out of Kenny Pickett that now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you overpay. I mean, he's now free to sign basically anywhere. Like if the Browns really wanted to add him back, they could. Maybe they'll sign him to the practice squad for all we know. Who knows? But you know, it's an interesting situation. Yes, I get it. It's unique in that way. But to get a 5th-round pick back and basically just replenish the pick that you gave up, you essentially only traded DTR for Kenny Pickett in the end. Like it was basically just like a quarterback swap, if you will. And so from that standpoint, like it's a win. And I do think, again, I want to reiterate, like that they were planning on keeping 4 quarterbacks. That was going to be the direction they were going. And then circumstances changed, as they tend to do in the NFL. And the Raiders were willing to pay up what Andrew Berry was looking for. I think the fact that the trade ends as a wash is awesome. And I also think it speaks to the fact that aside from the Quinshon Judkins unexpectedly winding up in a legal situation that he was in, and that's still sort of playing out right now where he's not signed, not at camp, all those different things. This has been arguably Andrew Berry's best offseason since he's been with the Browns. Now, that does take some projecting here by what we think these rookies are going to do and what we think these rookies are going to be. But I think I can say this. I think right now, based on what we've seen at training camp and throughout the preseason, I feel really good about Carson Schlesinger and Mason Graham basically being like two defensive studs for this team. And those are your first two picks. And if they short up two spots there, if he nailed those two picks, like you already feel pretty good about that situation in general. Quinshawn's not here, and again, that's the biggest blemish to his class that he signed. But without I've been harping on the fact for months that I thought Quinshawn was ready to be that lead horse back to sort of assume that role, his play style, running like Kareem Hunt, all those things I brought up over the this past year. Make me believe that when he is out there, he has a chance to be great, especially in this system and in this offense. So I feel good about the prospects of him eventually being good. It's just going to take it's going to take longer than anybody expected to get him in the building and ready to compete and play and contribute to this team. And then beyond that, like, I think you have some other pieces in this draft class that you answered. Harold Fannin Jr. seems like he's going to make a major impact. He's going to be very involved in this offense. If one of the quarterbacks at least pans out, you feel like you maybe find a guy that's at least a long-term backup for you, if not your franchise quarterback. I hope it's the latter. And then, like, this would be a knockout of the park draft class just in general. And then that's on top of the fact that, like, I've mentioned that I think the Malik Collins move was a slept-on move by this team. I think adding him to the defensive line has been as we've already seen the impact of that. I think we're going to see it in the regular season. He's a great player, and it sort of again goes unnoticed, but he's good. He's a good player. I think Cornelius Lucas could end up being a pretty strong swing tackle for you. They did a lot with a little. And I do think in that respect, like, Andrew Berry deserves some bit of, like, I get it. He's had bad drafts. There's a lot of reasons to be critical of Andrew Berry to this point in his tenure. But I do think this year he, as I said, took lemons and tried to make lemonade the best he could with what he had. And I think there's a chance that this could set the foundation for the team moving forward if they get Quinshawn in the building at least, and if this regime has time to see it through, like, it could be the thing that sort of turns the franchise around and gets things back on track. So a lot of reason for optimism. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, Andrew Berry's totally redeemed himself and he shouldn't, his job shouldn't be at stake if the team has another bad year, any of those things. Like, he's in this spot because of decisions that he's made to this point, including the Deshaun Watson trade, which he's going to have to wear for the rest of his career. And so those things they're not forgotten by any stretch. But I do think this is setting up to be, especially if you get a couple foundational pieces here that are contributing for the future and you save your job because of it, and you get another go around next year to have another draft class that can maybe blend in with this one to be your future. I think this has the potential to go down as Andrew Berry's best offseason, and this Kenny Pickett trade to get a 5th round pick back after giving up a 5th round pick and basically only losing DTR over it, who's now a free agent or is going to be available for anybody to sign off of waivers. Like, I think it's another positive move for Berry this offseason. And I think he's set this organization in the right place to go through this transition and maybe be set up for the future and longer term if it all works out. Now I use the word if, like, we still have to see it, but I do think that this right now looks like it's trending to be Berry's best offseason that he's had here. And that's good news if you're hoping that he can sort of salvage this thing and get the train back on the tracks and get the Browns going in the right direction. We'll see. But man, like, I was stunned by this because I was convinced in my heart of hearts they were going to keep all 4. But as I said, circumstances change, and he was able to swing a deal with the Raiders. It makes sense that they were calling. I even mentioned it on yesterday's show that maybe there was now this market for Kenny Pickett, and what do you know? It emerges. Kenny Pickett's going to Las Vegas. By the way, circle your calendar for November 23rd. Browns at Raiders. Could we get a Kenny Pickett revenge game? We shall see. But we can't talk about this situation without also highlighting the fact that the Browns quarterback plan finally makes sense. Hallelujah.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse, you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks. You'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
Russell Faison is eligible, and South Carolina just became a legit national playoff contender.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Russell Faison is eligible. The NCAA did the right thing and made him eligible. We're going to start the show there. Obviously, huge news. In the second part of the show, I do want to get into the point that I've had this attitude. I know a lot of you guys have had the same attitude, and I understand why. But I'm going to also tell you why the mindset of, yeah, well, of course they did the right thing, is not exactly, I guess for lack of better words, and long story short, very lucky that this is the ruling that came down for Russell Faison, not because it wasn't the right decision, but because of something the NCAA did today that is the exact opposite of what they did in this scenario. I'm so fired up, as you can tell. Let's get right into the news. Massive news came out around 4 o'clock today. And that is that the NCAA has officially made their ruling. This is a long road for Russell Faison. It's his 7th year of eligibility, but as we've talked about before, didn't play college football until 2022. He's only played 3 years of college football. And a lot of this also happened when he hired Darren Heitmer, a lawyer from the Fort Lauderdale area, former Florida grad, I believe. And he was very instrumental in this. He also had a lot to say this. We're going to read some of his quotes, but the University of South Carolina already released and the football program already released a video on social media. If you haven't seen it yet, it'll give you goosebumps. It has giving me goosebumps right now, where they just simply hung the jersey in the locker, and played some music in the background just to illustrate, like, yeah, it all finally happened. He finally heard back. Remember, this is something that they brought out in the beginning of the year, right? Like they all the paperwork was filed in January. And now I have heard from people, and I don't know if I'm allowed to reveal the source. I'm not going to reveal the source, but it's somebody that we are having on the show soon in the national media that told me this summer that there might have been some things that happened behind the scenes that, like, from his own camp that weren't filed correctly, or that's what the NCAA was saying or something. But it just became this instance where the NCAA was kind of giving the runaround for Faison. He had to wait. And then finally, the week of the game, like I would have thought for beginning of fall camp, August 1st, like something round number wise, for lack of better words, that this is when that would have happened. And it never did. And the fact that it now happened the week of the game, I don't know what it means for his availability, for how much he's going to play. I don't know how much they've already put in the install for Virginia Tech, or what they were already trying to figure out what his availability would be. I said this last week. It's probably about time to start preparing that he wasn't going to be around for this game. Didn't mean it wasn't going to be eligible for the season, but for this game, no. I did not think that was going to happen. So just massive news. Again, Darren Heitmer, his lawyer, kind of, I wouldn't say spearheading this, because it felt like this was never something that like South Carolina stopped pursuing and stopped like breathing down the necks of the NCAA about. I mean, Beamer talked about it repeatedly. You had the Free Soul shirts that came out last week. You had kind of vague threats that were like legal threats, like don't make us go, bring this into a court case, from his lawyer, and his agent or whatever you want to say. I mean, just a massive pick me up, and like we don't have to go through the entire play by play of what happened, what it means for this South Carolina program though, and this team in 2025. This makes you an instant legitimate contender for the college football playoff. And I know what a lot of you are thinking. Well, Chris, we already felt like we were that. I agree. But a lot of it felt like before you started hearing some of these, don't cuss, Chris, don't cuss, dumb blank tapes or takes from national media. Like, well, Lenore Sellers is going to have to be Superman. With Russell Faison and Lenore Sellers, you have the legitimate chance of having one of the best 1-2 punches from a rushing standpoint and in a run game standpoint in the entire SEC, if not the country. I do not feel like I am overreacting or being a person in the moment. And this has nothing to do with Rocket Sanders as a player. Rocket Sanders was awesome last year. He was awesome. He was so good in the run game. He was good out of the backfield catching the ball. He was instrumental in winning so many big games, especially that Missouri game, right? He's the one that scored the game-winning touchdown. We saw him all season long be a massive part of this offense. Rocket Sanders was also in an offense that had so many unproven pieces around it. Josh Simon was your main pass catcher. We didn't know what we had with Nick Harbor. You didn't have Mazio Bennett was a receiver. We still are waiting. We feel like he's only scratching the surface. This offense is so much more complete, so much more deep, and there's so much more talent now. Like on there without Faison, him being added to it, I don't feel like I'm wrong or I'm reaching here when I say I think Faison can be not much better. That sounds rude. Even better in this offense, and this offense can be even better than it was a season ago when it was firing on all cylinders. I'm not talking about the first 6 games. I'm talking about what we saw against A&M type of offense. Like, I think that's what he brings to the table. The whole very lazy take on him from like the national media when he first came in was, oh yeah, it's a kind of a scat back guy. It's gonna, home run hitter and like, dude, this guy is 220 pounds. Look at his arms. Look at his upper body. Look at his lower body. And I mean, this is a guy that is going to be physically ready to run between the tackles in the SEC in this gauntlet of a schedule. And I hope to God it starts on Sunday. And Virginia Tech better pray to God that it's not. Because this kid, he has got to be just, dog on a leash, ready to run. I mean, this guy has to be so fired up for getting this 7th year of eligibility. He's going to make it count. I am just beside myself with what the possibilities are of this offense now with him in the fold. And here's the thing too, guys, like just because he is going to be available, now you start looking at all the other, like you still have Attaway, you still have Jordan, you still have Jordan Howell, like you still have all these other pieces. You got Matthew Fuller, you got a Gustave or however you pronounce the name from Colorado. I mean, this backfield just became loaded. And oh, by the way, every time the ball is put in the belly of Russell Faison, there's a chance that the most dangerous and dynamic player in all of college football will pull it back out in an RPO and then get to the edge and either take it to the house like we saw against LSU, even though it was between the tackles, but be able to take it to the house in that, or find one of the unbelievably many talented receivers and pass catchers this offense now has. It feels like this type of impact. This is something when you look back on the season, I'm not saying it will happen because the schedule is tough. We know, and injuries can happen. Knock on wood, they don't, or some unforeseen crap. Maybe John Mateer is second coming of Jesus or Bama and LSU are both actual like title contenders. I don't know. Crazy things could happen. But this very much feels like at the end of the season, when you look back and you say, wait, what were the key things that happened that led to this unprecedented, memorable, historical type of season that South Carolina had? Well, it probably started on August 25th when the news that Russell Faison was eligible came down from the NCAA.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
One of the biggest news that just dropped, honestly, like a half hour ago, because the big question was Aiden O'Connell obviously out. He injured his wrist. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. And then the big question was, well, who's going to be QB2? Because Cam Miller looked like a rookie. Right. Despite that, first preseason game where I was the one, I didn't know Aiden O'Connell's beehive would come after me, but they did. And, then there was the question, well, who's going to be QB2? Right. And they pick up Kenny Pickett, and the Browns ended up releasing him. And Kenny Pickett, you guys, if you guys are just wondering some information on him, because he does have some experience, and that is what Pete Carroll said that he wanted to bring in someone with experience. There were so many names thrown out, but as for Kenny Pickett, the Browns were ready to release him. He played in 13 games with the Steelers in 2022. He started 12 times. In 2023 with the Steelers, he started 12 games. In 2024 with the Eagles, he played in 5 games, had 1 start. And according to ESPN in their 2024 rankings, he had 291 passing yards. That tied him for 53rd, 2 touchdowns, tied him for 49th, and 1 interception. So he does have some experience there, guys. Obviously, 30 games, 25 starts. As for his touchdown to interception ratio, 15 touchdowns, 14 career interceptions. What were your guys on the thoughts of them going for Kenny Pickett? Because they made a move to get a quarterback instead of picking up a quarterback off the waiver wire. Q, we'll go with you first. Just your thoughts on who they brought in to be QB2.
Well, I think you said it with best when you said experience, and being on the conference call or the Zoom meeting yesterday with head coach Pete Carroll, that was what he emphasized over and over again, right? That he wanted someone with experience. And for everyone that was saying Cam Miller should be the guy, I asked him specifically, what did you want to see from Cam Miller that put him in position to be the backup quarterback? And he said, well, a couple of years of experience. So that kind of ended the conversation that a lot of people had about Cam Miller could be the guy. He clearly can't be. He's not ready yet. He's a rookie. He just has a handful of snaps under his belt, not even starts. He has snaps under his belt. So not an opportunity for him to be the backup quarterback. And so then you wonder, where are they going to go? What direction do they go? So then they make the trade for Kenny Pickett, right? Just happened a little while ago, as you mentioned. 5th round pick. For me, and, Lincoln, correct me if I'm wrong, for me, if you're giving up a 5th round pick, he's going to be your backup quarterback probably for the year. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be your backup quarterback for 6 to 8 weeks while your backup quarterback is healing from a wrist injury. Sounds like Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback because you gave up capital. You gave up draft assets to get him in return. So to me, it feels like Kenny Pickett's going to be the backup quarterback, and we might not see Aiden O'Connell again.
Over the weekend, Sam Howell and now was traded from the Minnesota Vikings to the Philadelphia Eagles to play backup. Has experience in the league, a notable quarterback. And then the same thing for Kenny Pickett. Look, the Raiders needed to make a move because when Adrian O'Connell went down, they were left without a true backup quarterback. And much to Q's point, Cam Miller is a project that's going to take some time to develop. There are things that he's got to learn. You saw the last 2 games after that performance against Seattle, the last 2 games, how he took his lumps. He took some lumps, and so he's got some growing to do, which is natural. It's a different game. It's a different aspect. Offenses, defenses are still pretty much the same, but they're played differently with a lot more different speed. So Kenny Pickett does have the chance to come in and play for number 2, and the Raiders had to have that. Geno Smith has a history of injury history, not necessarily pronounced the where he can't play, but there's times he hasn't been on the field, haven't been available. So you got to have a capable backup. And without that, what I was most surprised with, and I know we'll have a reflection moment of the game, what I was most surprised with is that, and I know it's in the past, but they didn't let Aiden O'Connell go with the one offensive line.
Yep.
And the only reason I bring that up is because there's a big drop off from the starting offensive line to the 2s and the 3s. Okay.
And we saw it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been talking fast about it. So, I don't know if it was done on purpose, necessarily not to let him shine or whatever, diminish some of his shine if you had plans for him. But unfortunately, he's back now he's hurt again, and he's out for a significant amount of time, and you're left scrambling along with playing these numbers games. So, it's interesting how these things happen and the way they sort of fall in shape. But the Raiders did not look good the other night.
Yeah, and I think for a guy like Aiden O'Connell, who has, ride or die supporters, I'll say that, guys. I think for him, it's a little bit upsetting because you don't want to see him go out like that. But I felt like he was one of the guys that regressed, unfortunately. And then you never want to see anyone get injured. And this is not how you want it to turn out. But I think them bringing in a guy like Kenny Pickett and, moving an actual piece, yeah, it seems like they're going to go with him for the rest of the season at least. And then I do still believe they did release some cuts, but I do still believe that they're going to rock with Cam Miller and he'll be part of the 53-man roster as well, because they also talked about still wanting to develop him. It was just kind of like reps because we saw Cam Miller be a rookie in that preseason game, and that's fine because he just has to get reps. My question to you guys is, do you guys feel like this will be a good fit for a guy like Kenny Pickett? What do you think, Link?
Former first round pick, has some value. I've never really watched him close enough because I thought that sometimes when you throw rookies into the fire, they either make it or they cook, they burn up. And so it's the deliberation, the jury is out on Kenny Pickett to me, but he's with his 4th team in 3 years,
right?
Or whatever.
Tells you a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
tells you a lot. What I don't like about Kenny Pickett, and maybe not like is the wrong way to word it, but when they decided to bring in Russell Wilson to the Pittsburgh Steelers, he asked for a trade instead of saying, hey, man, okay, they're bringing this guy in. This guy's got a history of being injured. I can battle it out. I'll be ready when my number's called, right? Instead of pulling your best Aiden O'Connell impersonation, he asked for a trade. I'm not a big fan of that personally. Again, it's just me, my preference. I rather a guy that, okay, he was a former first-round pick of the Steelers, so unless they told him behind closed doors, hey, there ain't no room for you here, I thought he should have battled it out with Russell Wilson. And you saw what happened. He got injured right away. I would have liked to seen that fight from him just to know what he's kind of made of instead of just, hey, I want to trade, get me out of here. And then he went to Philadelphia and backed up Jalen Hurts. And you're not getting on the field unless it's in mop-up duty, or unless Jalen Hurts goes down. And, then he gets traded to Cleveland, and now he's traded to the Raiders. So he goes from traded from Pittsburgh to Philly, traded from Philly to Cleveland, now traded from Cleveland to the Raiders. I mean, I think he's going to be a glorified backup throughout the course of his career. The good thing that he has going for him is that he does have that experience, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what he has going for him, is experience. It's not a whole lot of great play. I think the last time that the Raiders played the Steelers and he was the quarterback, the Raiders actually should have won that game. I think that was Derek Carr's last game with the Raiders, where there was about 3 degrees out there and it was freezing cold.
Yes, I remember.
My bad. Didn't mean to bring up.
No, it's all right. It's all right. No. It's all right. But here's the thing: because the Raiders are scrambling, that Geno Smith is your starter, but you got to have someone just in case, obviously, right? And it's better to have someone who's experienced rather than someone who's raw. And I think that's what you're approaching right here. Who knows whether or not Aiden O'Connell ever surfaces back in a Raider uniform? I just think that for what it's worth, I think he's capable. I think he struggled at things, but also, for what it's worth, I don't think he ever felt comfortable. I looked at him in this last game. I didn't think, for the short amount of time he was out there, I didn't think he felt comfortable. Of course, he was still holding on the ball too long. Again, These are emotions that are going to be either flushed out or they're going to do you in. That's what players have to deal with. Either you can take the criticism, either you can take the ray that you're going to see out in front of you and be able to play on that level, or you're going to move on.
Right.
Aiden O'Connell will still fetch a value. Somebody will like him too in the other scouting departments. It might give you something for him if that's what you want to see, but you got to have a capable backup. And for what it's worth, before the waiver wire went, where you had a bunch of teams scrambling for guys, before that happened, the Raiders made a play and gave up a 5th round pick, which is not really that big.
So the question for you guys that I have is, are you guys feeling more confident with the quarterback room? Like, there was a lot of quarterbacks that could have been available, and they went with someone that I wasn't even thinking they were going to go with, to be honest with you. I thought they'd go for a guy like Tyler Huntley. And I thought if they were going to move a piece, go for a guy like Marcus Mariota, who's already been in the silver and black, has the experience with Chip Kelly. So this was kind of like left field for me, to be honest with you. What were your guys' thoughts, though?
Well, I'm interested. Why were you so intrigued by Huntley?
Because I think the fact that he's also a mobile quarterback.
Okay.
And he does have the experience. He's a young guy. And then putting him behind Geno, like, one of Geno's best qualities is actually what he does off the field as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his best qualities. Like, if you actually look at what he did in Seattle, like, he really had that locker room, right? And I think being behind a guy like Geno is so important for a young quarterback. And a guy like Tyler Huntley, like, he's not going to wow you, but you can also use him as a mobile quarterback. He was great in college at that.
No,
right?
he was.
So,
I covered him at Utah. There's no doubt about it. But the thing is that sometimes with running quarterbacks, that's the first thing that pops in their mind when their reads are down.
Yeah.
And that you run a risk of getting injured there. You know what I mean? And that's my only issue. And besides that, there's a lot of times where offensive coordinators, when they have mobile quarterbacks, will instill plays for them, which are different than what your other plays. For example, you would not have a Joe Flacco of the Browns doing the same thing as Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set, different approach, different accuracy levels and stuff like that. So, and that's what I'm talking about. So you don't want to get into where you're creating too many game plans. If you get somebody on the free agent wire or you trade for somebody, you much rather want them closer to what you have right now. So that way you keep everything the same and not having to create a whole new game plan for a specialized player.
Yeah.
No, and see, for me, Snoop Huntley was one of the guys I was looking at as well because he was available. I didn't know if the Raiders were going to be willing to trade for someone. I didn't know how invested they were in that backup quarterback position, not named Aiden O'Connell. Again, when I see that you're giving up a 5th round pick, and I know that it's not a super high pick, but it's still a 5th round pick. It's still Nate Hobbs. It's still Hunter Renfrow. It's still Richard Sherman. It's still, those are notable 5th round picks. It's still a guy like that. It lets me feel like, at least, that the plan is not for Aiden O'Connell to rehab and come back and get his backup quarterback spot back. It means that Kenny Pickett's going to be your backup quarterback. I could be reading it completely wrong, and if I am, that's okay. But that's what it says to me, that, hey, this guy is going to be your backup quarterback. You give something up for this guy and not just pick up a guy that was available. Like I said, it tells me a little something. So that's why I feel like Aiden O'Connell's days are probably numbered with the Raiders now that they make this move.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens with the development of Cam Miller too. But the hopes is that we don't actually see Kenny Pickett or Cam Miller on the field. The hope is that Geno stays healthy throughout this entire season, and so we don't get to see them. Right? That's actually the hope. Any final thoughts, you guys, before we take a break and get into the next segment, because we still got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, I got a lot to get to. No, I mean, just, it's funny just covering this team and being around this team and being a fan of this team. It always sees, and it seems like, Lincoln, and you could tell me, the last preseason game and the first regular season game, there's always something going on with the silver and black.
Yes.
Always something going on.
No doubt. You're absolutely right. And the stuff continues. The stuff continues. It does continue. What we're seeing right now. Absolutely.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, or maybe you have a division winner, dark horse, you'd like to parlay. Maybe the Broncos and the Seahawks you'd get some juicy odds on that if you wanted to do it. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
DJ Lagway is back and will start for the Florida Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
Quarterback is DJ Lagway, right? No one is going to question that. As long as he is healthy enough to play football, he is going to be the starting quarterback for the Florida Gators. It's as simple as that. There's no competition, despite what some transfer portal quarterbacks may have thought that also lost the starting job that they were actually competing for. I mean, if you're going to be a backup, Florida's probably a better place to do it. Just want to throw that one out there. But DJ Lagway is the starting quarterback. Billy Napier mentioned yesterday in his press conference that DJ Lagway has been 100%. He's been a full participant. He's going to be playing against Long Island, which I don't think many people were surprised about. I mean, we've been saying the whole, well, if there were a game, he'd play. We'd been talking about that one. But I do think that we had Nick Delatorre here last week from Florida Victorious, and he mentioned the rumors. Not even that it was anything that he thought was going to happen or that he heard was going to happen. It was just people started talking about, well, maybe you don't play DJ Lagway against Long Island. And Billy Napier put a pin in that one by saying that, yes, DJ Lagway will start this Saturday against Long Island because Florida Gators football is back. And he's going to be out there. QB2, I think, is Aiden Warner right now. They brought in Harrison Bailey from Louisville by way of UNLV, by way of Tennessee. And I think that right now it's Aiden Warner above him. We've heard really nothing but incredibly high praise surrounding Aiden Warner since the spring. We've heard about his development. We've heard about, last season, he was coming off the torn ACL, so he was limited in his development, and now he's not limited in that development. So he's out there fully participating. He's been spinning it, as some people would like to say. Spring game looked pretty good for him. He looked confident. I don't think he's mobile at all, or I don't think he's mobile, but I don't think he's as immobile as a lot of people painted him after that Texas game. I think that Texas game was just bad. It was just a rough showing. He was deer in headlights, But I think from what I've heard and from what we've seen reported, Aiden Warner being QB2 is the most likely outcome. Harrison Bailey, I believe, would be QB3, and Tramel Jones would be QB4. I have no issues with that. I think that Tramel Jones might be the most physically talented of the three backups, but he's still a true freshman. And I think that what you're looking for from a backup is some stability, which you could argue, Harrison Bailey hasn't proven that. Aiden Warner hasn't proven that. But I think for Aiden Warner, he's probably the best mix of at least having decent physical ability, comfort with the system now that it's year 2 for him. The improvement that we've seen, I think that it's fair for him to be QB2, Harrison Bailey QB3, and Tramel Jones QB4. Again, I think that Tramel Jones, though, is the most physically talented of the three backups. It's just a matter of getting experience out there, right? Which, hopefully, against Long Island, he'll get at least a little bit. At running back, it's Jaden Baugh at the top, Jacoby Jackson behind him. I don't care if you want to say 1A, 1B, 1, 2. I don't care how you describe it or how you want to list them. They're both going to get a ton of reps. They're both going to get a ton of carries. So I don't necessarily care to argue who's listed as 1 or 2. They're probably going to be listed as an or. And that's all that matters, right? That both Jaden Baugh and Jacoby Jackson are going to get the ball a lot. I don't care if it's 50-50, 60-40. Get them both the ball a lot. And you're probably going to win some more football games in 2025 because of it. So I don't necessarily care. I think that a lot of it will also depend on, we'll say situationally, maybe they feel that Jaden Baugh is the better pass protector. And so he's going to be in on, when they're trailing, he's going to be the guy in there so he can be in pass pro working effectively. Not that I necessarily think Jacoby Jackson's bad at it. I don't necessarily think Jaden Baugh is great at it. I think Jaden Baugh was good for a freshman, but I think that, time will tell between who's really developing in that area. And we'll be able to tell
If Florida's driving late and it's pretty obvious that they need to throw the football a lot, they're going to put out the running back that gives them their best mix of pass catcher and pass protector. And so whoever that may be is whoever it's going to be. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that running back 1 is better than running back 2 or running back 1A is better than running back 1B. Just get them both the football a lot, and that's the only thing that matters about this. Running back 3, I think it's going to be Katie Daniels. Had Treon Webb been entirely healthy, I think it would have been pretty tough for Billy Napier to bench him. This is a weird stance that I have about Billy Napier, just a weird thought I have about Billy Napier, where it's not often that he benches his guys. I think that when you look at, certain like tight ends, like Dante Sanders had a bad half in 2023 to open the game against Utah. Hayden Hansen got in over him and never gave it up. Right. And that was a great decision, but it is weird that he, started Sanders and then yanked him. And then it was like, oh, this guy's clearly better. If this guy's clearly better, he should have been out there. So I do think that it's been a little weird where he'll make that yank. He started him, which was weird, but then took him out right away. And then now we've seen guys that Napier brought in struggle and he hasn't taken them out. And I do think that part of that's just a show of confidence in them of hey, I evaluated you. I brought you here. I'm not going to just give up on you. But I don't know. It's also just, I feel like I've never been a huge Treon Webb believer. I've always thought that he was kind of just jack of all trades, master of none, which I don't think is always a positive thing there, to be a master of none. I think Katie Daniels gives you a more explosive running back. And I think that Katie Daniels Treon Webb's been hurt a lot. Katie Daniels being healthy kind of helps to limit that. So I do think that that having Katie Daniels as running back 3 is most likely, especially because the best ability is availability, and Treon Webb has not been available through, the offseason, right? And so I think that that's just, it makes it weird. It makes it tough. It makes it complicated. And I hate that that's how football has to work, but it's how football has to work. It's football. There's just no other way to put it. So I do think that it's more likely that Katie Daniels is running back 3. Had Treon Webb been healthy, I think he probably would have been running back 3. But he hasn't been, and so I do think Katie Daniels has surpassed him. And then Treon Webb will likely be running back 4 whenever, I think they said week 3 is kind of when they think he'll be back. And so maybe then he'll be running back 4 at that point in time.